These are 15 crazy conspiracies in the Joe Rogan Show. Episode 1954 Theory on the Afterlife.
The theory that many people have is that death opens up a chemical gateway in the mind. And that chemical gateway takes whatever the soul is, whatever consciousness is, and transports it into this new realm. It allows you, your conscious mind, to access this new realm, which is available to you upon death. And so a lot of the ancient cultures that did ayahuasca and mushrooms, they would talk about this realm as being like a well of souls, that you encounter disembodied life forms, disembodied spirits. And this has been, it's been a staple of so many religions. There's so many religions that talk about the afterlife. I mean, I get that you would want to come up with something like that just because you wanted to have some sort of a reason to keep going. With the rational mind, when you're dealing with this existential angst of a temporary existence and one day you're just going to be worm food, what's the point of it all? Why don't I end it now? Yeah. It's too much. Life is to live is to suffer. No, there's something waiting for you when it's over.
Episode 1117, Joe Rogan is shocked by the Adolf Hitler theory.
A lot of people are like, finding Hitler, get the fuck out of here. Yeah. They found Hitler, he died.
Yeah, I mean...
Not really?
We don't know.
Right.
I mean, this isn't like Ancient Aliens. This is, they declassified a bunch of documents. Both the Israelis, the British, and the Germans and Americans in the past 20 years have been consistently declassifying documents. And there were a bunch of specifically FBI documents that we were spending millions and millions of dollars actively searching for Hitler after the war, as was...
Really?
Yeah, like millions of dollars. Like Hoover was like, no, send more FBI agents to South America, to North Africa, go to the Canary Islands, go to Spain, trying to find out where this guy went. The Russians got the body, and they got his skull. And when they brought it back to Moscow, nobody has ever been able to independently verify who and what this body is. They let one genetic test occur, and the body with the bullet holes that they said was Hitler, and have said, and that's the narrative, that's the story, that's all the eyewitness accounts that are even in the vicinity of collaborating with each other, and corroborating each other's testimony. Like the closest version, because none of it seems to be very accurate, is that, okay, here's Hitler's skull, and when they did the genetic testing, it's that of a 35-year-old woman. So they're like, oh, well, this isn't Hitler. So what you had in South America, both Chile and Argentina back-to-back had fascist regimes. You had Perón, who was part of the Nazi party starting all the way back into the mid-30s. He's the president of Argentina. So the Red Cross, there was about 3 different rat lines that guys were able to successfully get out of Europe into South America. And there's no question that we're talking thousands, if not tens of thousands of high-ranking Nazis made it there.
Tens of thousands?
Tens of thousands. And I'm not talking like little soldiers. I'm talking high-ranking Nazis. But what you got in South America were isolated German-only communities. You could go into Bariloche, Argentina, and I'd be like, "Buenos dias, amigos," and they're like, "Guten Morgen?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I meant good morning. Yeah, sorry, it's 2017, right? I thought we spoke Spanish here."
So in 2017, you were there, and they were speaking German.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. Well, I don't look very. I might look more European than I do. So it's just them seeing me walking down the street and be like,
"Wow."
Yeah. And there's tons of communities. I mean, if you go to Colonia Dignidad, which is now called Villa Bavaria, it is only German.
Whoa.
In the center of Chile, in the mountains of Chile. Like there's no Spanish being spoken there. It is exclusively German.
And these are the descendants of Nazis.
Powerful Nazis.
Holy shit. Are there any legitimate eyewitness accounts of Hitler in South America?
Absolutely, potentially.
Whoa.
Yep, eyewitness accounts. I saw him get off a boat. I saw him meet here. And if it was just some person saying it, it's almost meaningless.
Right.
But if you look at the context of who this person is, the wealth that they have that they shouldn't have, like, can you explain how you got so rich in 2 generations? Like, okay, your grandpa got here from Germany in 1946. That's weird. And he he's on a legitimate visa with an Argentinian passport, also weird. And now he's a war refugee that's now worth millions of dollars. How does this work?
Episode 1897. Graham Hancock shares his theory on Antarctica ancient maps showing advanced civilizations.
One of the things I find most striking is the presence of Antarctica on ancient maps, because we didn't discover it until 1820, and yet it's on maps drawn in the 1500s with great detail, which again were based on much older source maps that have now been lost to us. Astonishing thing is the so-called Pinkerton world map. I don't know if you can find it, Jamie. Drawn, I think, in 1813 or 1818, based on the latest exploration data at that time. And where Antarctica is, yeah, that one, keep going right, it just shows a hole where Antarctica is. Because it was an honest map. Nobody had found it by then. But if you go back to, for example, the Wolsey-Wooler world map drawn in 1530 or thereabouts, you find Antarctica is present. That map shows Antarctica exactly where it should be. And it shows it, there we go, Antarctica, at the tip of South America, just south of South Africa.
And what did they call it back then?
Well, they call it the Southern Land, and it's larger than it is today, but it was larger than it is today during the Ice Age. Antarctica was a much bigger. Now, what the fuck is it doing on a map drawn in the 1500s, which we know was based on older source maps when nobody knew it existed in the 1500s? To me, the obvious answer is we are dealing with the fingerprints of a lost civilization that mapped the world and that left evidence of that mapping, which ancient map makers found and used and incorporated into their maps. These maps can be very confusing because they were trying to mix exploration data from their own period with data from the older maps. But when you look at these maps in depth, they're very, very intriguing.
Episode 1928. Theory on Adam and Eve and magnetic pole.
But the Adam and Eve story, the theory of that is that it happens in cycles of 6,500 years, and that it's a 90-degree flip, but 6 days later, or on the 7th day, it corrects itself.
The planet flips, not just
correct. It's a planet flip, 90-degree, and that because of it, the Earth essentially does a standstill. The sun will basically stay in the same spot, causing heating like we've never experienced, and that the wind and the waters continue with their momentum, because essentially the wind travels at approximately 1,000 miles an hour at the equator. So the theory is that when that event happens, it's going to be cataclysmic. And here's the wild thing, is that in that document it says a continental-sized tsunami being 2 miles high. Well, I showed you the Emikusi volcano in Africa, in the Sahara, which is at 11,300 feet, that has salt as well as evidence of gastropods, sea life.
That's 2 miles high.
Yes. And I'm like, it would make a lot of sense. Like, if you look at the Bible and involving like Revelations, and it's saying like
6 days.
6 days, on the 7th day,
Yeah.
God rested. In that document, it says 6 days, things start simmering down a bit, and by day 7, things are starting over new.
MMA Episode 12. Joe Rogan explained the USA moon landing was faked.
Press conference from 1969 when they returned from the moon is one of the most cryptic, weird things you'll ever see. These guys look like they just stole something and they're being questioned. I've never seen a video where people look like they're more full of shit than that video of the press conference from 1969. It's weird, man. It's weird. They're like fidgety and looking nervous, like they're getting away with something.
So they didn't do it then?
They might have done it. They might have been forced to say some things that they didn't want to say, and that could be part of it.
Absolutely.
You know, they could have done it. But there's a lot of weirdness with the moon landing.
Mm-hmm.
It's if you wanted to have like a conspiracy to wrap your head around that's exciting, it's one of the best ones.
Really, but who benefits from it?
The United States government did, because it showed military superiority over the Russians, so we were able to do that.
Sure.
It also, it was the Nixon administration. People were just flat out full of shit.
Well, yeah.
I mean, they were just lying to people left and right back then.
That's government, though.
Yeah, but even more so then, because it was unchecked. There was no media.
Social media.
Yeah, there was nothing that would expose them for this. And this stuff, they would air it on TV once in 1969. You never see it again unless you watched it on film. There's no YouTube where you can go back and watch the astronauts on trampolines video.
The flat Earth thing is ridiculous.
Watch this. And like their feet are hidden. Look at this. Watch these guys bounce up in the air. It's like they're on some sort of wire, like they're being yanked up into the air.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what the fuck are they doing? And they're playing, like falling down, and it's very weird. But it could have been that they were really on the moon, and these guys were fucking cowboys and yahoos, and they wanted to bounce around. But there's videos of the flag moving in a non-existent breeze, which is weird too. And they try to make some logical explanations for why the flag could be moving in a vacuum, and some of it makes sense, but some of it doesn't. Like the wires one is weird. If you watch them fall down, like go to that one right there, Jamie. It might not have been real footage. What they might have done is use some test footage, like right there, Jamie, right there. Let it go. Like homeboy falls down, and then it looks like he gets yanked back up. Look at this. Whoops.
Oh, he did not. That's not him standing up.
Yeah, what is this?
Episode 1308, Joe Rogan explains his conspiracy on why 9/11 was an inside job.
Now, the conspiracy theory that you probably don't know is going to blow your mind?
Let's do it.
The day before 9/11, the day before the attacks, Rumsfeld gave a press conference where he talked about trillions of dollars missing. The day. Then, a plane slams into the very part of the building where they were doing the accounting, blows up half the fucking building in the Pentagon, blows up a wall. Donald Rumsfeld was on, where was it, the White House lawn?
According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
2.3.
Okay, now, again, somebody told you that literally, like right before 9/11 happened, they said they couldn't track $2.3 trillion. No, that didn't happen. That did not happen, but it did happen.
What the fuck?
Yeah, so think about what Kennedy said. Think about what you saw when you saw that Vice movie where Dick Cheney, who was the CEO of Halliburton, becomes a vice president and gets billions of dollars in no-bid contracts. Now think about what we just saw with Donald Rumsfeld saying they couldn't find $2.3 trillion. I don't know where it went. I don't know. It seems like we should have had it. So, like, we'll keep looking. Oh no, the spot where we looked just blew up.
Oh my god. What the
Find out
hell?
if that's true. If it was the accounting office, because this is what I love to say it because it sounds good. But let's make sure it's true that part blew up. But either way, that he did say that, and then they did get hit by a plane a couple of days later.
It's unbelievable.
It's so crazy. And no one talks about that $1 trillion.
Episode 1314, Joe Rogan shares his infinite universe theory.
There's hundreds of billions of galaxies. So
Right.
the idea that we're the only one. Not only that, Neil deGrasse Tyson explained this to me because this is a mind fuck and a half. That the universe is so big that not only is there another you out there that has done everything exactly as you've done to every pause, like that pause, every pause down to the second, an infinite number of times.
You're talking about, is it called the infinite, in an infinite universes, there's this exact conversation happening with people look exactly like that because infinity implies that there could be a million.
Infinite variations. There's one where you get up right now and you have to take a piss. And you run out of the room.
Or Charlemagne's there, you're here, I'm there.
There's one where you get up and you're mad that we don't believe you that you saw Bigfoot or something. You know, that kind of shit. The idea that when you think of infinity, we think about it as being really big. It's not. It's impossible to put in your head. The infinite universes, like the size of the universe, 14 billion light years apart, infinite numbers of those. Not only that, they think that inside every galaxy is a supermassive black hole, and inside that black hole may be another universe with hundreds of billions of galaxies, with hundreds of billions of black holes. Inside each one of those, hundreds of billions of galaxies, hundreds of billions of black holes, that it's fractal, and that it's impossible for you to even conceive.
Episode 1852 Theory on Benjamin Franklin experimenting on human bodies.
Did you ever hear about what Ben Franklin was? Okay, that's a different story. But
what did he do?
You never heard that, like, what he was found in? They found in his house?
No.
Like tons of bodies, bro.
What?
Ben Franklin, they found tons of bodies in his...
Ben Franklin was a serial killer?
No, he was like doing some weird shit, dude. Bodies.
Like experimenting with bodies?
Yeah.
Is this real?
Everything I say,
Was Ben Franklin's basement filled with skeletons? Repairs on Franklin's old London house turned up 1,200 pieces of bone from at least 15 people. Holy shit. For nearly 2 decades. By the way, this is from the Smithsonian. This is not some wacky conspiracy
This ain't SamTripoli.com.
Yeah. For nearly 2 decades leading up to the signing of the Declaration of Independence, Benjamin Franklin lived in London in a house on 36 Craven Street. In 1776, Franklin left his English home to come back to America. More than 200 years later, 15 bodies were found in the basement, buried in a secret windowless room beneath the garden. In 1998, conservationists were doing repairs on 36 Craven, looking to turn Franklin's old haunt into a museum. From a 1 meter wide, 1 meter deep pit, over 1,200 pieces of bone were retrieved. Remnants of more than a dozen bodies, said Benjamin Franklin's house. 6 were children. Forensic investigation showed that the bones dated to Franklin's day. Holy shit. The most plausible explanation is not mass murder, but an anatomy school run by Benjamin's young friend and protege, William Hewson. Oh, just an anatomy school.
Yeah, and we're just going to bury them downstairs.
Note to add in another article about this.
Oh boy.
It's just
Franklin's history as a Mason was one of the historian's initial points of inquiry. Though shrouded in secrecy, Masonic rituals have dark, known undercurrents which have at times gone horribly wrong. For example, in a 2004 initiation ceremony, a new member was accidentally shot by a member who meant to fire an empty gun but instead fired a loaded one. So they fake shot at each other?
Yeah.
But when historians dug deeper into what was going on in the Franklin home during the years the bones dated back to, they discovered the real culprit behind the bones is one of William Houston, the medical student. Yeah, they're basically saying the same thing.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
Joe Rogan's theory on time travel.
You know, that was the theory that Terence McKenna had to the thing that's going to change the universe, is that one day someone's going to invent a time machine, and that when they invent a time machine, all time ceases to become linear. So you think if you have a time machine, well, I'll just go back to the time where they were making the pyramids and I'll watch them do it. That's not what it works like. What he was saying, you can't travel where there are no roads. So once a road gets built, then you can travel. So once a time machine gets invented, then anyone from the invention of the time machine forward to forever can come back to that moment and can go to any point in time from that moment to the end of time. So all time ceases to be linear. So there's no like tomorrow will be Wednesday and the next day will be Thursday. No. It's everything happens everywhere all at once. So people can travel back and forth through time. You can never own anything because someone could just travel through time and take it away from you when you weren't looking. Like as time travel gets more and more sophisticated, you can go back and forth in time while you're talking to people. You know, if you don't like what you said, you could rewind and start all over again. If you're in an argument with your wife, you can go to the library and get information and come back and go, actually, you know, Herodotus once said, and then bam, your wife thinks you're the smartest guy in the world. Like this, but there would be no normal life anymore. It would the world itself would be completely unrecognizable because time would mean nothing. You'd be able to travel back and forth through time.
Joe Rogan Experience, 1928, Lost City of Atlantis.
There's a location in the Western Sahara Desert of Mauritania called the Rishat Structure. It's also commonly referred to as the Eye of the Sahara. It is a site that most people have never seen or heard of before, which is truly peculiar because it's so spectacular. It's a site that astronauts typically use to reference from space. It is a geological feature that is said to be volcanic in nature. And what's so spectacular about this is that it just so happens to match more than a dozen striking similarities to what Plato had described as the lost ancient capital city of Atlantis. Plato had described Atlantis as being the capital. Let me just mention that because it was an empire said to be made up of 10 kingdoms. And what I'm focusing on is the lost capital city, which was said to be made up of concentric circles, 3 of water, 2 of land, which matches the Rishat structure. It also was said to have an opening to the sea at the south, and if you look at it from satellite imagery, you can clearly see that water had ran through it. And furthermore, it was said to have mountains to the north, and you just so happen to have mountains called the Atlas mountain chain, which Atlas was said to be the very first king of Atlantis. And what's interesting is that the very first known king of Mauritania, which is where the Richat structure is located, is also, their very first known king was also named Atlas. And though I'm not saying that that's the same individual, but what we do today is we pass down names, right? Like people like, oh, my dad's name's John, and so is my son. And so it's another striking similarity, but it goes further than that. Like there's geological similarities, such as the fact that Atlantis was said to be made up of red, black, and white color stone, which is another similarity you see at the Richat structure. It was said to have an abundance of gold and that the outer walls were lined with it. And it turns out that Mauritania is loaded with gold, and not only that, the richest person ever known to exist in all of mankind is Mansa Musa of the Mali Empire, which consisted partly of modern-day Mauritania. And he was so rich from gold that he would be richer than Elon Musk and like Bezos combined almost. Like many unfathomable amount of billions of dollars. So that's another similarity.
What year was this?
Joe Rogan Experience 1266 Conspiracy Around White Helmets.
Right now, there are parallel universes right now that exist on things that you would have thought everyone can accept as a basic fact.
Like what?
You know, Syria.
Yeah.
You know, the white helmets. There are some fairly serious people saying the white helmets are, you know, some kind of media front for Al Qaeda or Al Nusra.
Would you explain the white helmets for people?
So when there's a bombing and a building collapses, they go in and drag people out and get them medical attention as quick as possible.
And people think that they're somehow or another involved in it? They're a front?
Yeah, and the footage is faked in order to drum up sympathy for the rebel-held areas. I mean, I've heard, you know, serious people say that.
Serious people?
Yeah, not loons on Facebook. I've heard, you know.
Like journalists? Or
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to really get, like, I know people that have gone to Venezuela and they come back and they go, I don't know what the fuck is going on over there. I don't know who to believe. I don't understand it. Venezuela is a very strange one. And I get messages all the time, and, you know, I've had Abby Martin who goes over there and she has one take on it, and I have other people that I talk to that have a different take on it, and I do not know. I don't know who to believe, and I think you'd have to go over there and you'd have to spend a lot of time to try to figure this out, and it would have to be the entire focus of your life to really try to parse it out.
Joe Rogan Experience 1339 Conspiracy on Parallel Universes.
What about this? What if every time you went to sleep and you woke up, you passed into a nearby and very similar universe, but not quite the same? And depending upon your choices and how you live your life, it's how you wake up and what new one you pop into on the other side. And everyone's just a little bit different. The whole world changes just a little bit each time you make a decision, one way or another. Everything changes when you wake up. You think the world is static because it is when you're awake. You have no fucking idea what's happening while you're asleep. And when you wake up again, you have this foggy recollection of the past. And that's what you're going by. You're going by every morning waking up with a foggy recollection of the past. That's what you're doing. And you're assuming that nothing's changed and everything's static. And while you were asleep for 8 hours, nothing weird happened. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You have no idea. You're dreaming. You're having crazy fantasies and shit. Weird stuff is happening. You're fucking mermaids. You're flying through the air on a helicopter. You know, weird things happen when you're dreaming. What is all that about? Yeah. We don't even know. We have no idea what that is. That soup of possibilities that's fucking swirling around in between your ears while you're snoring up a storm. And then, boom, you wake up. Are you sure those memories are real? Are you sure that this isn't a whole completely new universe you're living in today?
Or simulation.
On an episode on February 17, TH 2019, Eddie Bravo shares his conspiracy in space and one world government.
The only way to make a one world government work is to have the people embrace it. They have to want it because nobody wants it. So the trick is to make people want it, to embrace it. There's only one way. The only way. And they've known this forever. The Vatican knew this. The Pope wanted to rule the world. They all knew it, but they couldn't do it. They all knew it, but they knew one way, but there's no way how they're going to pull it off.
What's the one way, man?
The only way is if there was some extraterrestrial threat from up above us. That would be the only way to have everyone embrace the one world government. They all knew that for years.
But it didn't work
That's
so far.
the plan. They could never
It's a
make
shitty
it work.
plan, though.
They didn't have the technology 500 years ago. The Vatican knew about it. They wanted it. And you go to the Vatican, you see paintings of like
Have you been there?
UFOs with aliens in them. And back when I used to believe in UFOs, but before I figured out that UFOs they want us to believe in UFOs. They're preparing us for a fake alien invasion. That's always been the plan. A one world government. The only way to do it is to get us to embrace it. And the only way to embrace it is from an alien attack. Ronald Reagan talked about it many times at the UN, CFR. He talked about it because wouldn't it make, he looked at all the leaders of the nation, of the world, and said, wouldn't it make our lives easier if we just had some kind of extraterrestrial threat?
Theory on ancient civilization.
Is above the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid are 5 further chambers. And these chambers are roofed and floored with granite beams that weigh about 70 tons each. And there are hundreds of them. And these 70-ton granite beams, which to put in context, a 70-ton beam is equivalent in weight to 35 large SUVs. These 70-ton granite beams have been elevated to a height of more than 350 feet above the ground and carefully and precisely placed in position. It is very hard for archaeologists to explain how that was done using purely leverage and mechanical advantage. You can say, oh, perhaps they built a ramp and hauled the stones up the ramp. But then you have to confront basic laws of physics. You can't haul a stone weighing tens of tons up a slope that exceeds 10 degrees. Then you start doing the calculation. How long a ramp do I need with a 10-degree slope to get to 350 feet above the ground? And the answer is you need a fucking long ramp, which should still be there, because it couldn't have been a sand ramp. It would have collapsed under the weight of those stones. It had to be as massive as the pyramid itself. So this begins to seem like an absurd idea, the idea that is foisted on us by archaeology. Maybe the idea that they regard as absurd, namely that psychic powers were cultivated by ancient civilizations, that they could use powers of the human mind that we have allowed to lapse. Maybe that idea deserves further consideration.